data science is constantly evolving. And that's part of also what makes the data science title kind of tough, because if you're in a data science role for many years, what you're doing 3 years from when you started the job is likely to be very different, because the underlying tools change. Maybe now you are fully immersed in building Gen AI things, which you
Yeah.
wouldn't have dreamed was maybe even possible in your lifetime when you started the data science role. And now you're like, wow, I can just have my users put a natural language question in and have any answer come back, and 99% of the time it's like exactly what they wanted, and it's calling my APIs. And so these kinds of crazy, completely paradigm changing things can happen in a data science career. And because of this fast evolution, it can be fertile territory for things like imposter syndrome, which you mentioned some time
Yeah.
ago, for distraction, for just how do you know if you're following the right thing? You could end up spending so much time learning some programming language or some tool, and because it seems like that's going to be the up and coming thing, but then something else comes along, like maybe you this is an unfair example to TensorFlow, because TensorFlow is still quite widely used. But what if you're like, wow, deep learning is going to be big? You spend all this time learning. Actually, a really good example is learning TensorFlow before TensorFlow 2.
Yeah.
TensorFlow was like this very cumbersome, very complex thing. You're kind of working at the graph level. And so you can invest like a whole bunch of time becoming expert at that. And then they released TensorFlow 2, and all of that is abstracted away. And like, and so maybe it ends up being helpful to you in some kind of indirect way, but you kind of feel like you've wasted all this time. So imposter syndrome, distraction, and of course, burnout, which we've already talked about earlier, because of this constant evolution, this kind of feeling like no matter how fast you move, you're seeing things move faster. And this can happen with data science skills. I think it can also happen if you're more entrepreneurially minded, which could be internally, like that could be the kind of data scientist entrepreneur mindset internally that you were talking about earlier, or you could be literally an entrepreneur. For me, as a co-founder of a tech company, I'm like, wow, we need to be taking advantage of these Gen AI things. And I see every day these crazy valuations, or crazy amounts of ARR that somebody else managed to capitalize on, say, this Gen AI thing faster than me or more effectively than me. And I'm like, and I have this constant feeling of being so far behind.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, so imposter syndrome, distraction, burnout. How can the people that you mentor,
Mhm.
how can our listeners, I guess, same question, how can we build confidence and resilience through all of this change and all this challenging learning?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And to comment on the learning tools and then feel you wasted your time, I remember when I just started, joined the machine learning solutions lab in AWS, I took some courses in like PyTorch, TensorFlow, and AWS we use Glue on CV. And then I also feel, oh, did I, wasted my time? But later you read your coworker's code, you understand what is it about. And then I think because we're in science engineer, we have this desire to optimize things, right? Especially what I notice is I think engineers really like to make their own coffee, make their own coffee art. I think it's good to have the desire to optimize things to be productive, but if you think about your career in the life, it's rarely a linear growth. I think first is to let go of the desire, oh, I have to have the shortest path, the quickest path to get a promotion. I think that's also the quickest path to get burnout. And if you sometimes, I think there's no optimized way to learn. I think it's learn whatever is needed for your current project. And I know now there's so many papers coming out. There are new tools every single day, and you don't need to be on the forefront of using all the tools, understand the papers. You know who needs to do that? Only those tech YouTubers need to do that. They need to talk about the newest thing. But if you work for a company, that's me, and then some of my coworkers adopt. It's okay to be a little bit late. So whatever is working right now, you can continue to use it, but always be open to keep an eye on the new tools. Um, if you think about putting things, especially in production, you want to use a tool produced by a company that has been there for a while. If you think about SQL, probably not gonna go anywhere. That's pretty robust. And when you think about what things to learn, again, coming back to your goal, your short term goal, your long term goal, uh, is this tool needed in your current project? And also, I think sometimes it is useful to be curious, to want to adopt a new tool. So, for example, use the best way to get into Gen AI, learn build LM application, I think, is to build a small app for yourself using some OpenAI API. Just think about how to apply those things instead of focusing on those noise. And yeah, it's never enough, I think. But if you have a goal to think about what you want to achieve in the next 3 months, and I also think it's in the Bay Area, people talk about anti goal. I think how I think about it is just have a list of things you can't learn. I remember when I was learning computer vision for a project at that time, there are also a lot of like NLP things coming out. I think, yeah, I am curious maybe how I learned those. I just watch like a short YouTube video on it, and or I listen to John explain it on Super Data Science podcast. I don't have to read a textbook, so I preserve my energy to what I need to do at that moment. And I think so kind of going back to your goal, and then just know that no researcher is always kind of reading new things, trying new things. Most of the things are gonna be outdated in 6 months. It's not very useful. And for that feeling of not enough, I think a lot of times what we need to develop also is the self trust, the self confidence. Previously, we talked a little bit about kind of those wounds, some other people's comment, and then I have this idea. I'm always very excited to share. I never talk about it. If you think about um, LSTM or some language models, they always have those forget gate. They will retain only the most relevant information, put it on this highway in each cell, and then retain that because that's productive. But for human, we retain information not because it's useful for us. Sometimes it's because it triggers a very intense emotion. Sometimes it's fear, shame, sadness. And then we carry that information, right? Also, when you first meet someone, the first impression is, if you think about it, it's crazy. It's assigned a very irrational weight in our head, right? I really wish in my head there could be something I can rebalance that weight of some first impression of someone. I can update this impression because people change, or I can have my own forget gate. I forget those kind of quote unquote wounds I have. I think in this way, the language models are more intelligent than us. So I think for us is to, I think for me, journaling is very helpful when those moment of doubt we have. Maybe we cannot get rid of the information like having a forget gate, but having the awareness, oh, this fear, I'm in a better place right now. Um I have a degree. I have done those projects. I think having a documentation, uh kind of, I can call it like a brag log. Every time your manager, your customer give you some information, some positive feedback, or you finish the successful project, or it could be just this very small bug that took you 2 days, you finally debugged it, you put it in a document, so later, you those are the information you want to carry on in your LSTM cell, you don't want to forget. But I think a lot of times we don't give us credit. We are very self critical, which if you think about it, it's not fair. You're not giving those positive feedback a proportional weight that's helpful for your future success. And another story, if I have time, I'd like to share is when I was in AWS, there was a project that has a very unique goal that was to prove to our customer um, the art of possible of machine learning. So the goal was to build a demo because we want to build more machine learning project for them, but they didn't really have buy-in of investing in our services in compute. So after I built me and my coworker built a solution for them. Later on, I think I want to write my maybe annual review. I wasn't sure whether that project I implemented with the engineer in the production, but I wasn't sure whether it was used because I want to get the kind of business metrics to kind of support this project. And then I feel I have the imposter syndrome, kind of those doubts kicking. Oh, if the customer not using it, did I actually make an impact? Is it because I didn't do enough, so they're not actually using it? And then my manager told me something I often kind of try to remember, and she said, the goal of that project was to show them the possibility we were to build a model. I think it was already great. We tried to put it into the production. So you reach this goal and it was good enough. And I think hearing that from a manager was very reassuring. And then it made me feel not just feel good, it made me realize, okay, I did achieve the success for that project. Different projects have different goals. And I think a lot of times when we evaluate ourselves, we don't give ourselves that credit. Maybe your manager is very critical. Maybe you are very critical for yourself. I think um, to have confidence, to have the courage to later advocate for yourself, to take on bigger project is to remember, have this brag log of what you have achieved, and also remember the goal of the project. It doesn't have to be perfect, but maybe the goal of the project is to improve a model from 60% to 70%. Right, 70% is not like a super high percentage of accuracy, but it's good enough. You beat the status quo, and then that's a win that you need to celebrate. I remember when I just started to building a machine learning model, I was just googling like Reddit, Stack Overflow, what percentage is good enough. And then I realized there's no universal answer. You have to know um, the having a baseline. It's like so important. Know the baseline so you know whether you have succeeded or not. um, I think um, a lot of us listening to the podcast probably always want to improve ourselves. I think it's good that you always want more, but I think at the same time you can give your credit and then celebrate the success, and then feel worthy of wanting to have more, be rewarded more.
Yeah, lots of great useful nuggets in there for people of any career, though also some ones that are really great for people in data science specifically, like that idea of what's a good accuracy, or what's a
Yeah,
good area under the curve, the ROC curve for this particular binary classification model or whatever. And there's no right answer because some problems are way harder than others. Some
yeah,
of them, maybe it's going to be trivially easy to have your binary classifier be perfect, like essentially every time. And then other situations where where a binary classifier, it's like, if you want to build an algorithm that's going to predict whether this stock is going to go up tomorrow or go down tomorrow, it's like if that can work 52% of the time, you might be a billionaire. Like if you can scale that up, in a hedge fund, like that's like the kind of those are the kinds of things you're looking for. You're looking for just tiny, tiny, tiny little bits of edge, because so many other people in the market are already taking advantage of all the signals that are out there.